Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Good morning and welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I am your host for today, Devon Cornelius, and as I said before, I'm here with some representatives of the St Kitts Water Services. We have the manager and water engineer, Mr. Cromwell Williams, as well as the assistant engineer, water engineer, Mr. Ryan Phillip. And of course, our conversation will be centered around water. Later on in the program, if we have time, we will be taking some calls. So grab your pencils or pens and jot down these numbers for the first time listeners. The numbers to call are 466-0989, 762 and 662. Remember, we also have the WhatsApp number, which is 662-2204. You are listening to Inside the News on WINN FM 98.9. Good morning, Mr. Williams, and welcome to the studios of WINN FM 98.9. Good morning, Mr. Phillip, and welcome. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning, Devon, and good morning to all who are listening and viewing WINN FM at this time. I would like to say that it's quite a privilege this morning for us to be here, and I would want to thank from the get-go Mr. Bacchus and the good folks at WINN FM for offering us this privilege to be here this morning to interface with our customers, all the users of water, and so we welcome this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. Mr. Phillip, do you have any opening words for the listeners?
Well, I share the same sentiments as my manager, Mr. Williams. You know, it is an honor and a privilege to be here, and I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have.
Awesome. So as I said before to you, our listeners, the conversation will be around water. So I'll be asking, I hope they're not too hard, some questions. I would like to know, of course, the listening audience would like to know as it pertains to water here in St. Kitts. My first question, or how we'll start this off, well, we're talking about water conservation. Firstly, how are our wells performing? And if you can say, how many wells do we have here in St. Kitts?
Okay, thank you again, Devon. Well, first, let me mention that this week, Monday gone, the 22nd of March, was World Water Day, the 22nd of March every year. The United Nations, back in, I think, in 1993, would have designated 22nd of March every year as World Water Day. And so we at the St Kitts Water Services Department take this opportunity every year to organize some public awareness activities during that week. And so this year, despite the COVID, and so we had to scale back our activities, but we still thought it was imperative and important that we still engage the public. And so today, this is one such opportunity that we welcome. And so, yes, before I get into the technical stuff, of course, I would also want to commend the Water Services Department.
Sure.
Our staff is just over 100 employees, and this morning I woke up, I went into my bathroom, I had a shower, I was able to use my toilet, I went into my kitchen, I made some lemonade using water from my tap, and I think later today I'll be doing some laundry and other things. And water, we tend to take it for granted, but we must never do that. And the theme for this year's World Water Day celebration is valuing water. And that basically means that we have to ask ourselves the question, what does water mean to me? Okay, and so we all understand, we all agree that, you know, water means life to us, in long and short. Water is life. Everyone agrees how important water is. And so in St. Kitts, you know, we've had a long history of managing our water resources successfully. I say that because many of us will recall traveling sometimes even to neighboring islands, and we are reminded that the water is not in abundance. And so somehow in St. Kitts we've always grown up feeling that water is available in abundance. And it was to a large extent, but we must realize as we have developed so much over the past decades, you know, that the demand for water has therefore increased tremendously. I could recall back in the early 2000s when the Marriott was coming on stream, and I was wondering, where are we going to get enough water to supply that monstrosity? And indeed, it came a day when the Marriott opened, and you know, and then some persons in Frigate Bay were experiencing water difficulties, and then the Marriott had to respond along with the government. The response was to install a desalination plant. And so that was not originally part of the plan, but it had to be done after we realized that we were not able to meet the demand from the Marriott, along with our other residential and domestic demands. So, you know, we continue to endeavor our best from the Water Services Department to anticipate these increases in demand and how we are going to meet those demands. I will pause here for now, and maybe perhaps you want to interject another question.
Sure, and thank you so much for that. I know that we celebrated World Water Day on March 22nd, and so you did allude to the fact that you guys had some activities, but because of the challenges with COVID, you were unable to carry out the usual, you know, from previous years. And so it's good to see that regardless of what's happening now, you are still able to do the usual activities and, of course, whatever other activities that you had lined up. But as I'm glad that you alluded to the demand for water when you highlighted the Marriott Resort that came on stream. And so people always had that thought that water is always here in an abundance. And you wake up in the morning, you turn on the pipe, you must have water. But we have to remember that in some countries, you don't have that privilege. You don't have the privilege. So when you get up in the morning and you turn on the pipe, you have water. Say thank you. That's the least. Say thank you. But as we're talking about water and the importance of having water, what are some of the initiatives that the department has in place to encourage customers to conserve water, save water?
Well, currently we
Conserve water.
conserve
Okay, well, at the Water Services Department, we always preach the message, conserve, conserve, conserve. And we've had instances where persons have sometimes point back at us and say, but are you setting the right example? And, that is something that, we will discuss, because I believe, of course, that as the utility, as the manager of the water department, of the water resources, we have the first responsibility to lead by example in conserving the water. But for the residents, for instance, we mention tips, things like, when you're using water in your bathroom, don't keep the water running while you are soaping your skin and things like that. And persons might think that these are insignificant, but they're not. One of the biggest things, though, really has to do with wasting of the water through leaks. And a lot of times, this comes down to the toilets. Toilets are made by man. They are not unbreakable. Anything that is made by man has a lifespan. And after most things, after time, parts need to be replaced, etc. You buy a car, you take it back to Hosford's or TDC or whoever every 3 months or every how much ever 1,000 miles for servicing. You have to maintain it. Similarly for your house. Things break, so on. So don't find it difficult when we say to you that your toilet, from after some time, they malfunction and they become a major source of loss of water. It is an undeniable fact. It is one that we have seen thousands and thousands of times. So I want to get that out in the open, because unfortunately, some persons are not really monitoring how much water they're using, and so they can be just wasting water. A toilet that is not functioning is just like you have your pipe open. It's like you have a standpipe in your yard. No one in their right mind will have a standpipe in their yard, will leave it open day and night. But you can have a toilet that is leaking, and it is equivalent to having a standpipe in your yard open, and it's just running day and night. You're going to work, and it's running water down to your septic tank, out into the earth, into your soakaway. You're sleeping at night, and it's running water. Mm-hmm. Then you get a bill, and it says you use 30,000 gallons for the month. And persons coming to us, smoking through their ears, eyes red, and they say, you think I'm running a hospital or a school or something? How on earth could I use 30,000 gallons? Your meter is not working. something. You all are not reading the meter. You all is estimating. Most times that's not the case. We do have meter read errors from time to time. A meter reader can make a mistake, so we're not saying. And when you come in, we will check. We will back check. But a lot of times, it will turn out that it's possible that after some years you might have a leak in toilet or something. But so that's one of the first thing. We must pay attention to your bill. Pay attention to your bill. See how much water you're using. And if you feel that you're not using the water that we claim based on our meter readings, come in and we will back check and we will get that sorted out. I think that is one of the biggest ways in which our customers, the general public, can assist in ensuring that our water is not wasted in the homes. Okay, so.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. And if I may add to that, what I would say to our listening audience is stop using your toilet as a waste bin. Because everything you want to flush in the toilet, and every time you flush your toilet, that's water, in my opinion, being wasted. And so people don't realize, but we use a lot of water. We use a lot of water. You're brushing your teeth actually, and the water is still on. You're washing the dishes, and the water is still on. And so I don't think we realize how much water we use on a regular basis. But you spoke about for example, just an example where maybe for a household, 10, 20, 30,000 gallons, of water. Can you say what the demand and supply situation is in St. Kitts in terms of different areas? Is it different for of course, well, I assume it would be different for the larger communities. So I don't know, St. Paul's versus Challengers or those areas, or where are some of the areas that you have challenges to provide water for the customers?
Yeah, sure. Our system is set up and designed in different water districts. So if you were to reside in St. Paul's, your water wouldn't be coming from the same source as if you're in Bastia. So we have to look at each system in isolation to really look at supply and demand. Currently, as everyone would be aware, we have major issues in Keon. In Keon, the water tank there is supplied by a well in Lodge that we call the Grange, and it produces about 250 gallons per minute. The tank is also supplied by a surface water intake in Green Hill Mountain, and that would bring in about 100 gallons per minute as well. As we go through the island, other areas of concern where, the demand is outstripping the supply, we would have in, let's say, Lodge, that is also another isolated system where they get water from a well in Lodge, and they also get water from intake in Lodge as well. But if you really were to look throughout the entire system, throughout the 8 districts, we are seeing a trend where the demand for water throughout is slowly outstripping the supply. And that's why we really want to preach conservation, because regardless of how much water we produce, we want to ensure that the water that we do produce, it is used as efficiently as it can be. Once we talk about water supply and water demand, we also have to mention the seasonal changes. The first question that you asked was how groundwater wells were performing. We get most of our water in St. Kitts, well, almost all of our water in St. Kitts comes from rainfall. That rainfall will be used to recharge our aquifers, which we would use for groundwater. We supply about 70% of our water from groundwater, so from aquifers. The other 30% will come from surface water intakes. But once you look at the seasonal differences, it really has an impact on the amount or the percentage of surface water that we would have So currently we're in, I think, the peak of the drier season in March, and we've seen a significant reduction in rainfall. So those communities that are fed from surface water intakes, they suffer significantly. We have 7 surface water intakes, one at Lodge, Green Hill, and Keon, Phillips's. There are also 3 on the western side in Old Road, Franklin, and Stonefort. So once we get into this peak dry season, and once we have prolonged droughts, we see a significant reduction in rainfall. And that's why you would see that our message becomes a little louder in the drier months, because we know how important it is to conserve the water that we do have. So in a nutshell, throughout our system, we're seeing a trend where the demand for water is outstripping the supply, the water that we can produce. Water, we normally term it as a renewable resource. It's not like fossil fuels, oil that, are non-renewable. But it also isn't like solar power that is infinitely renewable as well. We can have contamination of our groundwater wells. We can have changing land patterns and land use patterns that can cause significant pollution of our aquifers. We have had instances in the past where, aquifers or wells have become obsolete because of this contamination. So we really have to, one, protect what we have, and it comes back to conservation as well.
As you spoke about, Ryan, as you spoke about, wells becoming obsolete,
Yes.
How often are the wells serviced or maintained, the pipelines? Can you speak to that?
Yes, of course we can speak to that. So we have a groundwater division within the department, and they carry out all regular checks that include regular checks for static water levels that will vary once you're pumping. You have to ensure that you stay within the safe yield once you're pumping a well. But in terms of the piping, the columns that we put in, we try to pull these wells once a year. We're actually having a very aggressive program right now to pull all the wells and ensure that the columns are intact, the motors and pumps are intact, because we know how important it is to have that continuous supply. We also have generators at each of our well sites to ensure that once current or electricity isn't supplied, we wouldn't stop pumping water. And those are maintained, I think, monthly. We do monthly checks of our generators, of our control panels. We do, as I said, we try to incorporate a yearly well pulling program. You inspect the column, you inspect the inside the well to ensure that the casing and everything is, up to the standard. Because if we were to lose one well, the impact would be significant. In particular, I mentioned the Keon, and if we were to have an issue at the Grange for, let's say, 1 day, 2 days, even overnight, the impact of that would be severe. So our guys, they do a lot of work ensuring that these well sites are kept up to a certain standard, and I really have to commend them for that. But yeah, that's essentially how we go about ensuring that everything is fully functional and operational to provide water to the tanks that we serve from.
Right, thank you, Ryan. As you spoke about the challenges that Keon faces, with water, and how the department has been, servicing the wells, are there plans to construct wells in Keon to, basically a solution to the problem? Because I think you said the water in Keon is serviced from the Grange or something like that.
That's what we call the well.
The well.
Internally.
Yeah. So essentially, what steps would the department be taking to address the issue in Keon with regards to water?
Okay. We actually signed a contract with a company that does groundwater development, well drilling. I think we signed that contract back in December, and we have experts, hydrogeologists from that company who are actually on the ground today as we speak. Came in last weekend, so they're in quarantine, and as soon as they would have served their time, they will be going to work. There is one well in particular that was drilled a few years ago, and the water quality from that well was not up to the acceptable standard. We use the World Health Organization, WHO standards. And so they will be looking firstly at that well to do some remediation, hopefully to get it up to the acceptable standard. That's in Shadwell in the Bastia area. And then hopefully once that is successfully addressed, they will be going into the Keon area where we have already done some studies to identify areas where we think are most favorable for a successful well. And so they'll be going there to undertake drilling. And so we are optimistic that within a few months we will have an additional well or wells in the Keon area. And so we are, as I said, fairly optimistic that we will be able to increase the production capacity and the amount of water that we will have to serve Keon and the surrounding community. So that is quite a bit of a bright spot for us. And Keon, of course, is not the only area where we are challenged at the moment. There are quite a bit of areas now because, as I said earlier, the rapid expansion in the housing in particular and other development in the country, tourism-wise and so on. So we also are looking to extend this well drilling program across the island to see if we can get quite a number of wells in some of the other areas. Sandy Point, Newton Ground, pretty much the whole island. We soon will be in a crunch for water to meet expanding demand. Even if you look at agriculture, it's an area where traditionally, the water department would not have been in a position to allow farmers to tap into our system. Over the years, we've tried to allow that with some control because we can't just say, without restrictions, if you're a farmer and you have 2 acres of land or 5 acres of land, we'll give you a connection. And, one farmer with an acre of land can draw down our system, can use as much water as a whole village. So farming is always, one that has to be managed carefully, how much water we can allow farmers to draw down from our system. So we in terms of future development, we're looking, as we've said, first we look to groundwater, expanding, developing more wells. Because whereas we have as the trump card in our back pocket, which is really like desalination, we can always convert seawater into fresh water by reverse osmosis using a desalination plant, as many of our surrounding neighboring islands do, and some have been doing it for decades. But it's much more costly than our current methods using our surface sources and our groundwater wells. Desalination, on the other hand, uses a lot of electricity and therefore will be more costly, significantly more costly. Of course, once it gets to a point where we have no other option, then, we will have to do what we will have to do. But we try for as long as possible to, delay, going full scale into desalination. But it is inevitable, and we are currently reviewing proposals, actually, for desalination.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I wanted to ask, where is the greatest demand for water right now in St. Kitts?
Bastia, of course.
Bastia.
Bastia
For sure.
uses, in the Bastia system, well, depending on how you look at it, the Bastia system will really stretch down to Old Road, so to speak. And that system uses probably about half of the water supply that we use in St. Kitts and Nevis. I mean, sorry, in St. Kitts.
Yes. We have a question here on our live stream on Facebook. It says, are there plans in the future to require newly built homes to possess cisterns?
That is something that has always been discussed even at the Development Control and Planning Board. I think the Development Control and Planning Board, on which I sit as the manager water engineer, and that board oversees development in the country. We also would have persons like the manager for electricity and chief physical planner and other chief technical persons within the government, and including one or two persons from the private sector. And that board, I think, will have already put that proposal forward, that recommendation forward. So we're pretty close to perhaps seeing that become law or policy. It has been the policy or law for a number of areas. Frigate Bay, when it was developed, I think back in the 70s, that is part of the requirement. Once you live in Frigate Bay, once you build in Frigate Bay, you are required by law to construct a cistern. And so are some other areas where it was recognized that there might be the possibility of water scarcity. So I think that is something that is just a matter of time again. We have not, in St. Kitts, we have not had a history or culture of constructing cistern as part of our homes, part of our dwelling. Again, that is because the water department has been doing such a good job over the years of collecting water and distributing it on a regular 24/7 basis. But as we have said, it's becoming more difficult because of the rapid pace of development. And so we want to encourage persons. You don't have to wait for the government to say you have to do it. As a lot of persons have been doing, they have been buying these black storage tanks, whether it is a 500-gallon or 1,000-gallon, or anywhere in between there. And that makes a big difference for you, because it means that when the water supply from the government is interrupted for whatever reasons, you can have a continuous supply of water, even for a couple days if necessary. That wouldn't likely happen unless, it's after maybe a major hurricane. In some areas, it might take some time for the water to come back. But again, because we now have so much of our water being supplied by the wells, even after major hurricanes and so on. Once the electricity gets back up, we are able to get the water back up. And sometimes within a day, most areas have water back online. So, but still, we encourage persons to get their own cistern, and you can save money as well, because the water that falls on your roof is free.
Mm-hmm.
It's free, so you can even save money by catching your own water.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that we have to get out as well. If you're going to build with a cistern or if you're going to purchase one of those storage tanks, you should also look to include a plumbing plan that is fit for rainwater harvesting or water reuse in terms of grey water reuse. Something that, would take the strain off of our system. Because if it is that you were to have a cistern, or if it is that you were going to buy a 1,000-gallon tank, filling it from our supply wouldn't necessarily help the water department because you would be using our water in the same vein. So, once you go towards those methods, it would help a lot, the grey water reuse, the rainwater harvesting. You may need some filtration methods, or you can just use that water for, watering your grass, something that, wouldn't need you wouldn't use it for human consumption. But, other things that you do around the house.
Right. It is 11:44, so we will take a short break to say thank you from our sponsors. But before we do that, I wanted to ask, can you give statistics on how much water is wasted monthly, weekly, annually? I'll allow you to respond to that question after this break. Let's take a short break to say thank you to our sponsors, and when we return, we'll continue our program. You are listening to WINN FM 98.9 for another edition of Inside the News. I'm your host for today, Devon Cornelius. We'll take a short break and we will be right back.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Insurance Company Limited, where you get more coverage for less.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Good morning and welcome back to Inside the News. I'm your host for today, Devon Cornelius. Before we went for a break, I asked Mr. Williams about the statistics on how much water is wasted in St Kitts annually. Mr. Williams?
I think I would answer this one. What we would term now as non-revenue water because traditionally we would just call it a leak. But I think the experts found it necessary to term it non-revenue water because we now know that water has an economic value, and they wanted to get that point out. Many utilities throughout the world, they struggle with quantifying their non-revenue water or the water that is lost. In St. Kitts, we also struggle with quantifying how much water we have that is lost. That can be for many reasons. We have faulty meters. We also had traditionally, government institutions, they aren't built for water. So some of the institutions didn't have water meters. So, we have those loopholes in our system that we had to overcome. But to give you a figure, there was a study that was done by Daniel and Daniel Engineering in 2013, and they estimated that we have an average water loss of 53.5%, I think. It's a figure that I don't think we can verify whether it's true or not. We can have, a good bit of water loss within our system, whether it's because of aging infrastructure or whatever the case may be. But the figure 53.5, I think it was, percent, has been thrown around. And as you said, wow, it is a very large figure. And that's why we have to continue stressing conservation and ensuring that we make the most of the resource that is available to us now.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Phillip. We will open the phone lines now. It is 11:50, so we've been talking for some time. Very interesting points you guys have made, and a lot of information that I myself I didn't even know. So we'll open the phone lines to hear from our callers. Remember the numbers to call: 466-0989, 762, and 662. We also have our WhatsApp number, which is 662-2204. We'll take just a few calls because it is 11:50, 10 minutes from the hour. We'll take a break at 12 for the headline news and return at 12:30. We have a caller on the line. Caller, good morning. You are live on Inside the News.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for a program like this that is very timely, and I appreciate something like this, but I think that you gentlemen at the Water Department are selling the public a little bit short in terms of just saying that the toilet need to be checked because it's mechanical and it need to be replaced, something like a car in TDC. Tell them flat. The flap in the toilet normally gets hard, and when it gets hard, it does not close off the valve going to the toilet, so leave the toilet run all day. Also, the flap normally go mass, and it don't close properly. Something could get in the way, and your water could be running for the whole day. Let people know also that if they don't make sure that these flaps and the washers are properly checked in the valves, in the household, if they don't find it in the ground, they will be meeting it on their bill. Let people know straight. And so people have to make sure for themselves that the water that is coming through their tap, they have to make sure that it's properly used. And gentlemen, you went into the shower this morning, but you did not brush your teeth. It is good that when you brush your teeth, you shut off the water.
I sure did.
But you did not say that. If you're going to get part, don't get part of the story, get the whole story. There's a gentleman also who works at the water department, and when I see water wasting, I will make a call and call him, and trust me, he moved promptly. I cannot put my finger on his name right now, but he does an excellent job in terms of that aspect. The other thing is I do exercise very so often that I could. I'm going to White's Green Hill area where you have the source. The water tanks are very well need cleaning and the tops. And all they need is just a machete to clean off the top and to make sure that the rainwater will flow freely so that it will not rotten the cover. Most of the covers are rotten out. And so therefore that will cause things to drop inside the dividing tanks. Those need to be checked. The other thing is that in my mind, we have lots of spaces for water, plenty reservoirs, but we don't have the input. I think at the water department, for now, we have the same engineer for so many years, and I was looking forward to see more improvement of more water coming. As for now, I have just seen and heard that there's engineers that are stuck in quarantine. I wonder, why do we need engineer when we have engineer here? We also have well digging here, equipment. Why do we have to bring them in when we have them here? I am one who believes that we should use what we have at home as best we can to utilize what we have. And so therefore, so that we could sustain our own independence rather than depending on outside help. If we need it, we could call it, but if we don't need it, don't bring it. And I think that we have people here who are doing a very good job, just that we need to beef up somewhat and improve on what we're doing. What we're doing is good, but we could do better. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the program. It's good. Let us use less water. And if you look at Israel and how they use water, the farmers do wastewaters here, and people do wastewaters in watering their plants. You don't need that much water. You just need a couple drops, and that's it. The plant is good for the whole day, and you could do it the following day. So we are doing lots of wastage. Thank you very much for the program. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, caller, so much for your input. Let us take one more call here on our program, and then I'll have Mr. Phillip and Mr. Williams respond to the comments made. We have no callers. If we have no callers, I'll let them respond to the comments. Let's take this call before we go there. Caller, good morning. You are live on Inside the News.
Yeah, good morning to everybody. I just want to say something here. I don't know if any one of you guys, but the older one there, I don't think the youngster may know of this, but there was a time when there was a drive to encourage people who build in homes to build systems. What's the situation with that? I'm speaking to the water engineer. Water engineer you have there?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm speaking to him. And what's his name?
Williams.
The guy who's there.
Williams.
Williams.
Yeah, I want to know if you remember that and what happened to that now. The scrap that or what? To increase that, to encourage people to do that. That can be an added cost, So shed some light on that for me, please, if that is still a part of the encouragement to get people to build systems when they're building homes. Thank you.
Thank you, caller, so much for your input. We'll close off and we'll have Mr. Williams or Mr. Phillip respond to those questions.
Okay. The previous caller, well, he started by mentioning, by supporting the point we made earlier about leaking toilets. And he said we should have given more details as to how the toilet actually fails over time and need. And he mentioned the flap and so on, yes. And so, I'm thankful for him for strengthening the point. And, we didn't go into details because a lot of times the average person might not know, about a toilet, how the internal mechanism of a toilet is set up, and the fact that, it is so easy for the flap not to close properly for whatever reason. It could be, sometimes you would find over time a buildup of just some gravels or whatever in the toilet tank. And as he said, the flap over time gets hardened. There are various reasons why the flap cannot close properly. And once that flap is not closed, that is what shuts off the water in the tank. And so once that is not closing properly, water is lost, is seeping. And it's, as we say, it can sometimes be going on unknown to you 24/7. The point, though, is that the meter, and he made the point, you are responsible for the water that passes your meter. We cannot say that enough. You are responsible for the water that passes the meter that comes into your home. And so the only way you would know whether it is 5,000 gallons that passed your meter this month or it is 2,000 is if you are getting a bill, and if you are opening that bill and actually paying attention to what the bill is saying. Unfortunately, I have to mention at this point that far too many of our customers are not actually honoring their obligations to the water department in terms of paying their bills. And that is leading to the unsustainable management of the water resources. If persons are not paying attention to how much water they're using, if persons are not aware that they have leaking toilets, then our water is being flushed down the toilet, literally, and that is part, and the biggest part of the reason why we have such a high loss, as Mr. Phillip indicated, that one study done back in 2013 estimated that our water loss can be as high as 50%. I mean, that is just not sustainable. Not sustainable from the water resource perspective. It's also not sustainable from an economic perspective, because we use a lot of electricity to drive over 27 or 28 wells that are going day and night while you're sleeping. The wells are pumping water. Electricity is being used while you are sleeping to pump that water into the storage tank. And from the storage tank, that water is coming into your house. And whereas it should be stopping in your house, in many instances, it is not. It is being drained down the toilet. I'm appealing to all and sundry. Whether you can afford to pay $100 per month, or you can't even afford to pay the minimum $20, it's incumbent on each and every one of us to take responsibility for the water that passes through your meter. And so, I will also take this opportunity to indicate that at the Water Department, we are going to be more vigilant, more aggressive and assertive in ensuring that the water that passes your meter is accounted for. And at the end of the day, I have an aim which I make no apologies for, and it is simply that the first bill that persons pay at the end of the month must become the water bill. That is my mantra. The first bill that you pay at the end of the month must become your water bill. Because water is not, we need to stop playing around with water in St. Kitts. We have been playing around with life. We say water is life, we say water is important. This year, the theme is valuing water. We're not valuing water, and we have to start to value water in St. Kitts. We have to start to value water in St. Kitts. We have been playing around with this precious, life-giving resource for far too long in St. Kitts. Too many persons haven't paid a water bill for 5 years, 10 years. How on earth can that be sustainable? It is not. And we have to stop playing around and start taking seriously water in St. Kitts.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. We are at the end time of our first segment of Inside the News. And so we have to take a break now for the headline news, and we will return at 12:30 to continue this very interesting conversation. I have some questions coming in on the WhatsApp number, so we can address those questions after. You were listening to Inside the News on WINN FM 98.9 with your host, Devon Cornelius, and I am here with representatives of the St. Kitts Water Services Department, the manager and water engineer, Mr. Cromwell Williams, and Ryan Phillip as the assistant water engineer. Stay tuned for the headline news. We will be back at 12:30.
Found the sound. 98.9 WINN FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, and Carib Brewery.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
We are faced with tough decisions every day, but choosing the right home or motor insurance shouldn't be one. You need fast claim settlement from a company that's been rooted for over 31 years. And don't forget the A Excellent rating by AM Best. Make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Reliable insurance that you can count on. Get a quote today for your home, motor, contents, and liability insurance needs, and make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance. Tomorrow secured. Local agents, Dalil Walwyn & Co. Limited. Telephone 465-2631 or 469-5303 for the Nevis office.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
With the WINN Headline News, I am Kevon Brown. Making the headlines, National Heritage and Historical Sites to be considered for UNESCO's World Heritage List. The Barbados Private Sector Association calls for the minimum wage hike to be delayed. In Guyana, former Assistant Commissioner to the Police and 3 other officers charged with fraud. The National Student Council in St. Lucia is lamenting what it says is a lack of consultation on the proposed April reopening of school. HDS St. Lucia has the report. Internationally, protests in Bangladesh, sparked by a visit by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, have turned deadly, with police firing on protesters. Now, the details. Through the Ministry of Culture under the administrative supervision of the St Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO, an ad hoc interdisciplinary heritage committee is being established. Its purpose? To document and recommend a list of heritage sites in St Kitts and Nevis for submission to the UNESCO tentative list. The list is where state parties submit properties which they consider to be cultural and or natural heritage of outstanding universal value and therefore suitable for inscription on the World Heritage List. Ms. Dorothy Warner, Secretary General of the St Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO, will be working hand in hand with the Federation's permanent delegate to UNESCO in Paris, Ambassador David Doyle, who explained the committee will examine the state of the properties submitted to determine cultural, natural, outstanding universal value and state the conservation as per UNESCO's operation guidelines for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. The committee in St. Kitts is creating a list to increase the Federation's sites on that list. So far, one heritage site on St. Kitts has been inscribed on the list, being the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park, which was inscribed in 1999. The final list of heritage sites with potential for World Heritage nomination from across the Federation will be submitted to the chairman of the Interdisciplinary Heritage Committee, Minister of Culture et al., Janelle Powell, in May 2021. In regional news, the Barbados Private Sector Association calls for the minimum wage hike to be delayed. This report from Barbados Today.
6 days ahead of a hike in the minimum wage, the business community is urging the Mayor Motley government to put the move on hold for the time being. The national minimum wage is set to increase to $8.50 and $9.25 for security guards on April 1. At a virtual press conference today, Chairman of the Barbados Private Sector Association, Ed Clark, hinted at the possible collapse of some businesses, price increases and layoffs given the current economic decline if the hike takes effect. He says businesses support a raise in the minimum wage, but the timing is off, and he's suggesting a delay until early next year.
We have many businesses in Barbados have collapsed. Many small businesses very negatively impacted. Many large businesses have laid off people. Now in 2021, we see no revenue coming in from the tourism sector. We see a very stagnant marketplace, a very stagnant business sector. But now we're being asked to increase our minimum wage by April 1st this year. We, the private sector, are of the opinion that the timing is way off. We do agree that there's a need for a national minimum wage increase. We support it. We understand the need of our employees. But we do believe it should not be at the expense of the whole business sector and the wider economy. We certainly are asking the government once again, and for the public to understand the reasons that we are asking for deferral until January 2022. We believe it will give these businesses, certainly those in the tourism and hotel sector, certainly many of the small businesses who are still struggling, and many of the large businesses who have laid off people, time to build back up their strength, time to get this economy going again in order to allow us to be able to meet the demand then of these wage increases in 2022.
Clark suggested that the hike in the minimum wage should have been discussed at the social partnership.
The social partnership is of critical importance in how things are done in Barbados. It represents government, labor, and business sector. And I think things of national importance like this, certainly a national minimum wage, should be brought to the social partnership for discussion before it is finalized. And that has been the policy of government, certainly in the past. And I think that there's nothing for that to change at this time. We should be doing that as a matter of protocol, and we would hope that in future these things would continue to come to the social partnership for discussion prior to being made law or being made into an order.
In Guyana, former assistant commissioner to the police and 3 other officers charged with fraud. Guyana News Source has the story.
I'm Gordon Mosley. Here's what we're tracking. 4 police officers, including a recently retired assistant commissioner, were marched before the chief magistrate today to face various fraud charges related to missing funds in the finance department of the police force and the payment of a $19 million check. The charges were laid by the Special Organized Crime Unit of the Guyana Police Force. Appearing in court today were former Assistant Commissioner Kevin Adonis, Police Sergeants Michael Corbin and Jermaine Fraser, and Corporal Roll Haynes. According to the prosecutor's case, in March of 2019, police officers Michael Corbin and Jermaine Fraser, who were stationed in the force's finance department, allegedly approved and reused a payment voucher for $19,030,767 for fuel purchase from Guy Oil. That approval resulted in the finance ministry preparing a check for the payment in the name of the officer in charge for F Division in Region 7. The officer in charge of that division at the time was Assistant Commissioner Adonis. The Circle prosecutor is alleging that a check was endorsed by Mr. Adonis and later cashed at the Bank of Guyana by Corporal Raul Haynes, who took the Assistant Commissioner's ID card with him. The police force has since indicated that Corporal Haynes was not a finance officer for the division and was not therefore authorized to cash the check. The investigation of the situation revealed that no records were made of the check or whom the money was disbursed to at F Division, according to the police. The police force has also stated that an audit was conducted by the Auditor General's office, followed by a police investigation. The 4 police officers were today charged with the offense of conspiracy to commit a felony. They were granted $150,000 bail each on the charge. Additionally, Sergeant Corbin was charged for the offense of computer-related fraud. He was placed on $100,000 bail for that offense. Corporal Haynes was also charged with the offense of larceny by a public officer. He was granted $50,000 bail. The active officers have been interdicted from duty. The 4 accused will make their next court appearance in the new month. The Home Affairs Minister recently announced that more than $300 million cannot be accounted for in the finance department of the police force. There are a number of other investigations underway.
The National Student Council in St. Lucia is lamenting what it says is a lack of consultation on the proposed April reopening of school. HDS St. Lucia has the report.
The National Student Council says students around the island remain cautious about an April reopening of school. According to PRO Jean-Luc Constantine, the NSC is hoping against a repeat of January 2021, where schools were closed mere days after reopening following a post-Christmas spike in COVID-19 cases.
The council would have asked the Ministry of Education to include us in the discussions with the reopening of schools so that we could get an idea and provide feedback as to what can be implemented, what can be removed. At this point, this has yet to be done. So we await to see the situation which occurs when schools reopen, but we are still going to bring this point up with the minister to be included in discussions on the reopening of schools so that we can provide recommendations, so that we could provide feedback, so that we could analyze what our students are really getting themselves into.
Vice President of the National Student Council, Alan Splant, says continued community transmission weighs heavy on the minds of members of the body.
Most cases were seen, or all cases were seen at community respiratory clinics, which means that there is still community spread. So we're still looking at that fact also, that that students are going into the schools and there might be still community spread in the in our schools. We cannot just be affecting our students' education as it pertains to just going in, going out, going in, going out. So it's something that we're still looking at now.
Additionally, the council has taken issue with the e-books handed out to students for online instruction. They say the devices are woefully inadequate.
The e-books, I don't think there was proper communication as to what the e-books would have done for the students. So what the students said that that with having the e-books, they thought that they could have accessed the Google Classroom and the different apps to do the communication with the teachers in the live classes, etc. But then they got to find out that the e-books is something similar to a Kindle. Now, when you hear the name now, it comes to mind. An e-book, it's an electronic book to read, etc. on the device. Now, I'm not sure as to I'm not sure because I haven't been at any last meeting lately where they actually brought that issue up. I'm not sure if the e-books were fully explained as to what type of books they are using. But what was brought up by our students when we frequently meet them, they say that they're ready for the e-books was something to help them to do live classes.
Plant laments what he says is a lack of class engagement between teacher and student, which he believes has severely hampered the academic advancement of some students. The body says it remains eager to meet education officials before the reopening of physical classes. Sola Alfred, HTS News Force.
We now bring you these international reports.
Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina welcomed India's leader with warmth and praise, lauding Narendra Modi for supporting Bangladesh, especially through the global pandemic.
The government of India has always been beside us during our good and bad times. This time, India has handed over 109 ambulances to the people of Bangladesh. I extend my heartiest thanks to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his government and the people of India.
But violence flared among opponents of Modi's visit. Some clashes turned deadly as police fired on protesters. Still, Narendra Modi was keen to honor his country's role in Bangladesh's emergence as a new nation 50 years ago, following a brutal fight for independence from Pakistan.
Today in Bangladesh, the blood of those who fought for their liberation and the blood of Indian soldiers are flowing together. This blood will form such a relationship that will not break down under any type of pressure and will not fall prey to any kind of diplomacy.
Modi is a hated figure for some groups in Bangladesh. They point to what they see as his anti-Muslim policies in India and the influence he holds over Bangladeshi politics.
The current ruling party is still able to hang on to power because of the aggressive policy and support given by India. This is clear to the people now, and to protect their own interests, they've nakedly attacked the interests of the citizens.
Those who are currently in power are involved with Modi to cling onto their seat, which is why the ruling party now needs Modi's support to stay in power.
The economy has stabilized and boomed in recent years under Prime Minister Hasina. But activists say as those fortunes have grown, human rights have deteriorated.
This is very unprecedented in the history of Bangladesh. Today, we are supposed to celebrate Golden Jubilee of our liberation. But on this very day, people are getting killed, arrested, and attacked just for exercising their freedom of expression and just for protesting the arrival of Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India.
Bangladesh's leaders have criticized demonstrators for overshadowing an important independence milestone, involving an ally they see as increasingly important. Tanvir Chaudhry, Al Jazeera, Dhaka.
From the White House, condemnation of Georgia's new voting laws.
It's an atrocity. You don't need anything else to know that this is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting.
Demonstrators gathered in the State House as the Republican governor signed the sweeping measures behind closed doors.
Why is the governor trying to sign something in private?
One state legislator was arrested for banging on the door.
Please stop pulling on the handcuffs.
Georgia voted for Joe Biden in the presidential election, then sent 2 Democratic senators to Congress in a runoff election.
It's anti-democratic. It's un-American. They're trying to make it harder for people to vote rather than making it easier for people to vote.
Here are some of the key measures in the new law. There will be voter ID number required for absentee voting. That replaces the old signature checks. There will be a limit on the number of drop boxes for early voters in each county, so it will be less convenient. The law makes it an offence to hand out food and drink to those waiting in line to vote, and those lines get long. But it does expand in-person early voting. The man who signed the bill into law says this cuts the chances of electoral fraud.
Georgians will no doubt be soon overwhelmed with fancy TV ads, mailers, and radio spots attacking this common sense election reform measure. In fact, left-wing groups funded by out-of-state billionaires are already doing that now. They're using outrageous, false rhetoric to scare you and put millions of dollars in their own pocket.
There was no fraud. This is not about fraud. The only thing that this is a response to is the increased voter turnout of Black and brown voters in the state of Georgia.
Georgia's election process is already seen as one of the most efficient in the country, so critics claim this is a solution to a problem that never existed, one imagined by Donald Trump and his supporters. It will put pressure on politicians in Washington, especially Democrats, to come up with a national baseline for voting rules and regulations, and to do it soon. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
Lies of the century is the way the Chinese embassy in London described the UK's stand on the human rights of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. The Foreign Ministry in Beijing went further, saying actions imposed on China by the UK and other Western powers had been outrageous.
Sanctions on Chinese individuals and entities citing so-called human rights issues in Xinjiang are based on lies and disinformation. It breaches international law and basic norms governing international relations. It interferes in China's affairs and undermines bilateral relations.
Among the 9 individuals sanctioned by China is Ian Duncan Smith, former leader of Britain's Conservative Party. He said the Chinese action gave him a badge of honour for speaking out. In a tweet, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson supported those who'd been sanctioned, writing, "Freedom to speak out in opposition to abuse is fundamental, and I stand firmly with them." Johnson's Foreign Secretary says the criticism of China won't be stopped.
The ambassador here will be summoned and we will explain in very clear terms the position both in relation to the MPs and the other figures who have spoken out, but also that we will not be silenced.
Among the issues is the detention and reported abuse of Uyghurs in camps which China says are re-education centres. The rift between China and the West on this issue has a new low. Some analysts say it's likely to get worse.
The CCP will not back down. This would damage the authority of General Secretary Xi Jinping. But neither can Western liberal democracies afford to give ground when it comes to dealing with what is effectively a genocide in Xinjiang.
This isn't so much a diplomatic spat, but a major rift. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera.
You were listening to the WINN FM headline news on 98.9. Our top stories were National Heritage and Historical Sites to be considered for UNESCO's World Heritage List. The Barbados Private Sector Association calls for the minimum wage hike to be delayed. In Guyana, former Assistant Commissioner to the Police and 3 other officers charged with fraud. The National Student Council in St. Lucia is lamenting what it says is a lack of consultation on the proposed April reopening of school. HTS St. Lucia has the report. Internationally, protests in Bangladesh, sparked by a visit by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, have turned deadly, with police firing on protesters. Thank you for listening.
That was the WINN FM headline news. The headline news was brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, and Carib Brewery.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
We are faced with tough decisions every day, but choosing the right home or motor insurance shouldn't be one. You need fast claim settlement from a company that's been rooted for over 31 years. And don't forget the A Excellent rating by AM Best. Make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Reliable insurance that you can count on. Get a quote today for your home, motor, contents, and liability insurance needs. And make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance. Tomorrow secured. Local agents, Dalil Walwyn & Co. Limited. Telephone 465-2631 or 469-5303 for the Nevis office.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Found the sound, 99.9 WINN FM. People make the world go
Cable, we know being local means supporting our own, and our customers deserve the best. Our customers deserve platinum. So now, all customers of the Cable qualify for our new Platinum Loyalty Card. An elite MasterCard experience that lets you support your own like never before. Instantly send money to any Platinum Loyalty member at home or around the world. Shop online or in person anywhere MasterCard is accepted. Save with no interest and 0 annual fees. And the best part? If you're a Cable customer, you are already pre-approved. Just visit the Cable building in Basse-Terre or sign up online at www.thecable.net. Get your Platinum Loyalty Card today because you deserve platinum. Terms and conditions apply.
It's Easter, and it's time to hunt your prize. Come and celebrate Easter at the City Drugstore Nevis. Here are the rules. 1. Visit the store. 2. Browse for what you want and browse some more. 3. Choose wisely, and if you present a product with special clues, you win. Prizes include discounts, TDC gift cards, sweet treats, and much more. What's Easter without some shopping fun? So visit the City Drugstore this Easter and win big in our Hunt Your Prize promotion.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go round.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Inside the News. You're listening to WINN FM 98.9. I'm your host for the second half as well, Devon Cornelius, and I'm here with representatives from the St Kitts Water Services Department, the manager and water engineer, Mr. Cromwell Williams, as well as the assistant water engineer, Mr. Ryan Phillip. Of course, the conversation is centered around water. And just to note, for those of you who may not know, we celebrated World Water Day on March 22nd. And so their presence on the program today is part of their activity to educate the public about the importance of water and saving water here in St. Kitts. Before we went for a break at 12, I posed a question with regards to the electricity cost for water, because I think Mr. Phillip spoke about, the department having to spend or use electricity to pump the wells to get water to the households in different places, and so. What I would like to know, and of course the listening audience, is what is the real cost of, how much the department would spend on electricity to get water out to the public?
Yeah, so in terms of electricity, it's a significant part of the cost of providing water. As we have indicated, more than 2/3, about 70% of our water comes from wells. Now, that water is down in the ground. Sometimes the well is about 100 feet or more or less. But imagine water having to come from minus 100 feet or 100 feet below the ground. And the pump, which is placed inside of the well, has to force that water from 100 feet below the ground up to, most of our tanks, you will know, are located on mountains, on hills. So for instance, one of our main reservoirs is located at Morn Peak, which is above Birdrock, in the Birdrock Frigate Bay Hills. That is probably about a couple hundred feet above sea level, above normal ground level. So to force that water from below ground to on top of the hill, where it can then be fed back to your houses by gravity to get the right pressure, the right force coming through your tap, that requires a lot of electricity. Water department is one of the largest users of electricity. And we know electricity is not cheap. So when you're wasting water, think of it that you're also wasting electricity. Right? So it costs things. Our actual cost of producing water is around about $20 per 1,000 gallons. About approximately $20 per 1,000 gallons. Bear in mind that you are being charged $7.20 for the first rate, the first level of the water rates. That is, I think, 0 to 250 to 2,500 gallons. Between, I think, 2,500 gallons to about, is it 5,000 or 7,000? The rate then goes to $9.60. And then above that it goes to, above that it goes to $12 per 1,000 gallons. So we haven't reached $20 yet. And for businesses, commercial rate or non-domestic rate is $15 per 1,000 gallons. We haven't reached $20 yet. So water is being subsidized by the government and being subsidized heavily. And so, we need to bear that in mind also when we not being mindful of being very conservative in our use of water. Bear in mind that it costs, the electricity costs, the cost of paying the workers, the cost of the materials, the pipes, the pumps, and all that goes into providing the infrastructure to supply you with that regular and reliable supply of water. It comes at a cost.
That is some very, very interesting information, Mr. Williams. And I'm not sure how many people have thought about it, but every time you turn on the water, you are using electricity. And every time you waste water, you are wasting electricity. Now, we had a conversation off here when I spoke about, we would buy water, a bottle of water for $5 or $10, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the month, let's say you run a household, husband, wife, and 3 kids. At the end of the month, your bill, I don't know, $45.
That's a very good guess.
$45. So, can you make that make sense?
And before we went on the break, Mr. Williams had pointed to driving the culture that the water bill should be one of the first bills that you pay, not the electricity or not the internet, because in a sense you can live without those things, but you cannot live without water. It's virtually impossible. We also spoke about how water is subsidized, and I think that subsidy has led to, a desensitization in the value of water. And we spoke about the theme for this year's World Water Day, which was valuing water. We locally, we tend to value things that are more expensive. I don't think if, one of the gas stations had a pump running with diesel or gas running down the road, persons would say, oh my God, you're wasting gas. But if it is water, I have witnessed this myself. Water's putting out in there, and persons are so nonchalant to the fact that, all right, there's water being wasted here. Wow. Because we really think that it is an abundant resource. And I'm really trying to drive this point home, that it isn't as abundant as it was before. And it is something that is very valuable. As I said, we cannot live without it. So if it is we continue with this practice of, I'm not going to pay my bill, 1. And 2, all right, my toilet is running. It comes up to about $45 per month. For some persons, they pay that. And we have customers that pay. And they would pay the $45 and say, all right, let's just leave the toilet running. We can't continue to live like that. It isn't sustainable. So we really have to have that shift. It will be a paradigm shift where we move from, all right, water is abundant. We like to say it's God's water, it is free. We have to move from that to know, all right, water is a resource. It's something that we have to value. It's something that we have to protect, because without it, society really cannot function.
Right. And if I may add to that, I would say consumers are not aware of the obstacles and challenges that
the operations
that one would have to face in this case. I think it's water department would have to face to get water to the people of St Kitts.
And before we went on break as well, I think it was the first caller. He mentioned one point that really stuck with me. It was the response time, he couldn't remember the name of the individual, but the response time for one of our workers in terms of, rectifying a leak, ensuring that if there are any water issues in a community, they would address them. And we really have to commend our workers because they do an exceptional job in providing what is most times 24-hour service to persons. 24/7 we provide clean water to persons as well. And the things that we go through as a department to get this water to you, I would have to add that every morning, Sunday to Sunday, we have a team of guys that start working at 3 a.m. just to check the tank levels to ensure that when you wake up, there is water in your tap.
Yes.
So, when you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, we have guys out there making sure that your water is there. And another thing that I would have to say is I've come to realize that I never get calls saying, Mr. Philip, we thank you guys for providing water for me for the past 3 months without interruption.
Right.
But if water was to go for 5 minutes, my phone would ring nonstop. That it's such an injustice, and it's so difficult to operate. But the things that we have to go through behind the scenes, running at the pipes, ensuring that the panels are functioning properly, ensuring that the motors are maintained, it is a lot. And I can't stress enough how good of a job the guys that we have do in providing this service.
If I may add, before we continue, I remember having a conversation one time. This same topic came up about, water conservation, saving water. The department was in Nevis was encouraging the consumers to save water, and it was 3 of us having the conversation. One person responded by saying, "Well, I'm paying for it, so I could do what the hell I want to do with it." They're saying, well, at the end of the month, I have to pay whether it is $50 or $60. So it is up to me if I want to leave the pipe running all day. Okay. The other person responded by saying exactly what we've been saying this morning, that we don't know the serious challenges that the water departments would face to get water out to its people. And so that made me appreciate water more, because honestly, I had that same attitude. Oh, okay, it's water.
You wake up and shower every morning.
You shower,
you turn
brush
on
your
the tap,
teeth,
and the pressure is nice.
And it's nice, because it's very annoying when you turn on the water and the pressure is low.
Sorry to be so melodramatic, Devon, but when you said what that person said just now, I felt my blood starting to boil.
Oh, boy.
That someone would say that, I'm paying for my bill at the end of the month, so I can do as I like with the water. That should never be the mindset of anyone in St Kitts. For one, as we just pointed out, you're not paying the true cost of the water.
Right.
The true cost to bring that service to you, as we said. Secondly, the resource is limited, and so every gallon of water that John Brown wastes is a gallon that is denied to someone else in another area that doesn't have that supply. And very often you would find persons complain because they said, okay, we put out a notice that rainfall is low at this time and our reservoirs are low, and therefore, in order that in the morning everyone can have water, tonight at about 9 o'clock we will have to close off the reservoir so that the reservoir can build up overnight. And then we'll go early in the morning, as Mr. Philip said, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, guys are already up and on the road. And we'll open up early so that when everyone start getting up at 5, 6, 7, there's a much better chance that everyone has water. So we want to always remind persons of the interconnectedness when it comes to water. What you do in your house with the water that comes into your house has a direct impact on your neighbors and persons, all of us as a country. So we want to drive that point home, that Not because you can afford to pay $50 for 5,000 gallons of water at the end of the month, mean that in this dry time when the grass is turning green, you would put on your sprinkler and you would water your grass so that your grass can remain green. That means that you're denying someone else down the road the opportunity to have a good shower, to have water to cook, or to take care of their sanitary needs. So we want people to bear in mind that water is too valuable and too precious for us to treat with such a cavalier attitude. That I can do what I want with the water because at the end of the month I can afford to pay $50. You're not paying the true cost of the water.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Williams, it begs the question, what if we are to pay the true cost of water? Do you think we would be able to afford it?
Yes. Part of our mandate as the water department is to ensure that water remains affordable, because water is a basic necessity of life for sanitation and so on. However, what the government needs to bear in mind is that the water rate must be structured such that you provide a basic minimum at an affordable rate. So let's say the first 2,000 gallons, which can take care of your basic domestic needs, is at an affordable rate. However, the rate should be such that once you start using beyond that, which means you're now using water for non-essential purposes, recreational purposes, maybe you're washing down your house, your car often, maybe you have a swimming pool, or you have your nice landscape and so on, those uses now is where you pay a premium. That is where you now begin to pay the true cost. So, I am an advocate that the rates should always be revisited and make sure that the rates reflect the reality in terms of the demand and the supply. Okay, so we can't just wholesale subsidize water blindly and say, everybody should get water at a subsidized rate regardless of how much they use and how they use it.
Great. The phone lines are open. It is 12:50, so we will open the phone lines to hear from our callers. We have a caller on the line. Caller, good morning. You're live. Good afternoon, sorry. Good afternoon. You're live on Inside the News.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And I also must take the opportunity and say good afternoon to Mr. William.
Good afternoon.
And to Mr. Philip.
Good afternoon.
And must really thank you guys officially for the excellent leadership and service you continue to provide to our nation, our federation, and to our country. But really, you're basically based here in St Kitts, but still giving in terms of your expertise and knowledge and so which go throughout the wider part of the federation. So I want to commend you guys, and also by extension the water department, because I always will say that there are things that are important and there are things that are equally important, but people also must remember that there are things which are most important. And one of the most important things when it comes to not only, as a individual, a family, a community, a nation, one of the most important things is water. And before I move on, let me just ask two quick questions. Just imagine, can someone run a hairdresser office or business or a restaurant without water for a day or a whole week?
Absolutely not.
But on the other hand, that person can run maybe the hairdresser without maybe, say, the phone line or, other other services that are important, but not the most important, which, as I said, is the water. Because you can't run a hairdresser business without water providing the service that you open to provide. Right?
Yes,
so
sir.
People must understand. Just imagine, for instance, someone would prefer to spend, say, maybe $40, $30, say, doing a top-up. And that top-up, they're on the phone for a long time. I mean, you name it, exposing themselves to the radiation and whatever. But they will not prefer to pay the bill for the same $30, right? Imagine paying that bill for $30. At home, you're going to need water for a whole month. So you're paying the $30, say, for a whole month, and top up for just to talk. And what you need at home are the benefits at home. Imagine, you get to bathe, you get to cook, you get to wash, you get to, and as I said, it's not only for a day, for a whole month, maybe for the same $30 or less, or even a little more, right? So that is why I ask for people to be reasonable and responsible. To be responsible. And when you look at the rate also, we pay one of the best rates when it comes to water in the whole world. And that is what people are not appreciating, understanding, accepting what is good for us. Let's continue to support what is good for us. And as I always will say, I've said and will continue to say, any day, any time, for any reason, the only right a man has a right to do is what is right. So you have a right to be responsible, because being responsible is what is right. One may say you can be irresponsible, but what benefit in being irresponsible? Being irresponsible is only a choice. I don't think it is a right thing to be irresponsible, So I just really want our people to understand that they need to do what is in the best interest of themselves, their family, their community, and by extension, our country. So I will give you guys the opportunity to continue, and I, to be honest, really wish that we can have, maybe on a national scale, a debate. Maybe we can look at either pinpoint or organize, or maybe slotting, let me say even once a month or once a quarter, to have a discussion on water or on health. These are things that are important, equally important, and most important. So I think we should find the time to have the debates on them. But I'll just give you guys a chance to continue to debate on this excellent topic and what is most important in our lives, in our family, in our community, and by extension, in our country. Yeah, thank you, and y'all take care.
Thank you, caller, so much for your contribution to our program. You're listening to WINN FM 98.9 for another edition of Inside the News. We are still taking calls. If we have no calls at this time, I'll allow Mr. Williams or Mr. Phillip to give a comment to that caller's comments.
Okay, well, I thank that caller for his support. You could hear his passion and conviction as he, like we do, exhort persons to take water seriously and to conserve. And the fact that the price that persons pay for water in St. Kitts is about as reasonable as anywhere else in the world, much more reasonable rather. Matter of fact, just across the waters in Nevis, my understanding is that the water rate there is about $13 or $13.50, I understand is the lowest rate, and our highest rate here is is 12. Our lowest rate starts at, as I said, $7.20. So in Nevis, you're paying almost twice as much for water, just across in Nevis. And in many of the other islands, it is a similar situation. St Kitts, the last time our rates was adjusted was in 2001, 20 years ago. Nothing else has remained at the same price for 20 years. But, you know, it's the disheartening part is that as cheap as it is, some persons still refuse to honor their obligation. I will go as far as say their moral obligation to pay their water bill, whether it is $20, $30, whatever. When you think of the bottled water, as you said, you buy 2, 3, 4 bottles of bottled water and you already pay $20.
Right.
When you're getting water for a whole month for $20.
Just before we continue, Mr. Williams, we have a caller on the line. Is that caller still there? Yeah, caller, yeah. Good afternoon. You're live on Inside the News.
Good afternoon to Cromwell and Mr. Philip and yourself.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Well, you spoke about the insufficiency of the water supply with respect to the demand. And the demand seems as if it is forever increasing. Is there any contemplation to go to desalination plants? And in so considering, would you also twin it with the generation of electricity for that plant? Because, you know, the desalination plant uses a lot of electricity. You're planning to twin it with the generation of electricity via wind-generated electricity or solar-generated electricity, because that is where we're heading based on the trajectory. We have to go to desalination plant. That's one. And what about the desalination plant that was down the valley? I understand there might be plans to bring that plant to Bastia. Is it pragmatic to bring it? Is it obsolete? What plans are there to have that particular desalination plant commissioned, brought to Bastia and commissioned? Now, the good gentleman, Mr. Phillips, spoke about the Herculean task and efforts by the gentlemen them who work at the water department. And they have to be complimented. Very often they have to go out, sometimes in the middle of the night or the morning. But then from investigation, it seems as if the morals of the workers at the water department is a bit on the low side. One, because you have a set of vacancies that have been in existence for so many years, and they have not been filled. Is there any reason or set of reasons why these vacancies remain unfilled for such a long period of time? And then lastly, you have government institutions and properties. They are the major culprits of leaks, and those leaks could accumulate to a good amount of water. Do you build government institutions, properties, and what is your impression with respect to leakages in government property, whether school, hospital, wherever? Because we have a very poor maintenance practice, and water suffers as a result of that. Leakages do add up, and that is why we have to resort to taking off water from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning. All those factors would have been put into that equation in leading to the effectuation of taking off water. What is your impression, or what can be done to lift the morals of the persons at the water department? You yourself carrying out a position, you're director of public works, but yet you're still carrying out the role of manager of the water department. What is your take on it? Just be frank and candid. Okay, I will listen.
Thank you, caller, so much for your input. Let us take one more call, and then I'll allow Mr. Williams to respond to those questions. Caller, good afternoon. You're live on Inside the News. We have another caller. Caller, good afternoon. You're live on Inside the News.
Yeah, good afternoon, man. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Good afternoon to you guests there. The guys there talking about water, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just had a quick question for them. Are they gonna? I know there are quite some wells in both islands that's out of commission. Are they planning to revive those wells by any chance? And if so, are they going to have any type of collaboration with the Nevis authorities to get the wells in Nevis up and running? Because I know of at least 2 wells on the Nevis side that's out of commission. There's one down there at Nelson Spring, and there's another one over like to the right side of Cliff Dwellers behind that little golf course.
Yes.
So I was just wondering if they're going to have any program to revive those wells that's down. I'll listen off the air, man. Thanks.
Thank you, callers, so much. We'll close off the phone lines for a short while I allow Mr. Williams and Mr. Phillip to respond to these questions. You are listening to WINN FM 98.9 for another edition of Inside the News. I'm your host for today, Devon Cornelius, and we have representatives of the St Kitts Water Services Department, Mr. Cromwell Williams and Ryan Phillip. Mr. Williams?
Well,
Mr. Phillip,
I
go
will
ahead.
start with the matter that the previous caller raised in terms of the move to desal, when, how, from a departmental standpoint, even a governmental standpoint, we will inevitably have to move towards desalination. The question, as I would have said, is when. There are some islands, neighboring islands, Anguilla, Antigua, Barbados, they've already made that step because of the particular circumstances. In St. Kitts, we are very privileged to still have good supply from our groundwater aquifers. But in terms of when and how we're going to go about incorporating desalination into our system, we would have to make sure that it is feasible, one, economically, as I would have said it. It is very energy intensive. We mentioned already how energy intensive it is to provide water from our groundwater sources. Desalination is also a method that is very energy intensive. And the particular issue that arises with desalination is that we are kind of forced towards it as a result of a change in our weather patterns, climate change, because we're experiencing less rainfall. And it wouldn't make much sense for us to further contribute to emissions by using fossil fuels to power these desalination plants that I would have said are very energy intensive. So what we would have to do is find an alternative method, or possibly we start this initiative on a smaller scale, because we would find ourselves in a loophole where we're combating the climate change issues by going towards desalination, but we're also contributing to the climate change issue by going to desalination.
Right.
So to answer the question, yes, once we go that route, we would definitely look and try to find the best method to do so, to provide energy, to make sure that, we can change just the salt water to fresh water, and we can have it for human consumption and what's not. Another environmental issue is the discharge. When you have an operational desalination plant, you would say for every 3,000 gallons of salt water you pull in, you'd get maybe 1,000 gallons of fresh water. So that 2,000 gallons now becomes hypersaline, what we term brine. And the brine would have to be discharged somewhere. So if we are to go that route, we have to find environmentally friendly ways for us to discharge this brine. We wouldn't want it to interfere with our marine life. It can have it. When you look at water, you have to look at it as all-encompassing. All water is connected. We've learned about the water cycle from primary school, come right up. So once we go the route of desalination, we'd have to make sure that we really plan properly to ensure that, and also once we go that road, there may be no coming back. It would have to be final. So how long? I think with more exploration in terms of groundwater, well drilling and what's not, we could have a few more years. Can't tell you how many years we have out of that resource. But for now, I think it's best for us to hold off and going full-fledged, put down desalination plant right throughout the island. It would solve issues, yes, but it would create issues of its own that may be larger than the ones that we face with today. And another thing, as technology in anything advances, things normally become cheaper, you know. So when desalination first came around, I think in the 80s, you know, the method that they used was different. It was called thermal expansion, even more energy intensive. And they've now found ways to limit the use of energy to ensure that, you know, it's more environmentally friendly and more sustainable. So maybe within the next 10, 15 years, there may be new technology. They now use reverse osmosis. Maybe in 10 years, as I said, you know, there may be a new method that we can use that will be more cost effective, that will be more environmentally friendly. And I think then is when we would be able to jump on it. So I think the more time that we take, you know, to wait, you know, it would be better for us.
Great, thank you.
Just want to add to that we are taking a baby step, so to speak, though, because we actually have in the making a desal plant with, I think, is being provided to us from the United Arab Emirates,
Yeah.
UAE. I think the capacity is about
35,000 gallons.
35,000 gallons per day. So that is due to be sited just outside of Keys, and we are currently in the process of conducting the environmental impact assessment. Then the contracting will be done. Will be sent out for various contractors to bid on the job, and then I would say probably later this year or early next year we could actually see work on the ground commence for that. So we are actually in the process of taking our first baby step into desalination, and the expectation is that it will be the source of energy will be solar, but it would also have the capacity to draw electricity from Skellex main as well. So it will be dual solar and grid power from Skellex. If I may continue to address some of the other questions that the caller raised, he asked about the one at La Valley. There was a desal plant that was installed at La Valley. We know that development did not come off, and the plant, I think, would have suffered significant deterioration over the years, probably over 10 years or so now, significant deterioration. I have not personally been close to the plant, but from what I've heard, it is in a serious state of deterioration. I'm not sure how much of it can be salvaged to be incorporated or reused, so I can't speak definitely to that. But, you know, as Mr. Phillips said, it's just a matter of time. And the thing with planning for infrastructure, such as water, is that, you know, and other utilities like electricity, you try your best to plan, but sometimes your plans can, you know, not be too on target. Because, for instance, a major development, whether it be hotel or otherwise, could come. Sometimes it might take 2 years, 5 years, and then suddenly, you know, it can take less, and then you're scrabbling for that additional resource to supply that facility. But you mentioned the moral of the workers, and I don't want to skip over that, because at the end of the day, the Water Services Department is part of the government, and we're providing a very essential service, and I don't want to skip over the workers, because a lot of time we focus on the water, but behind every glass of water that you drink, as I said, you must think of the people who made it possible. And
Right.
Ryan spoke of guys getting out of their bed 3 o'clock in the morning to go out in the cold, in the wet, to go up in the mountains to make sure that you have that glass of water that you're going to put to your lips and you're going to drink. And so we don't want to ever take for granted the workers at the Water Department. They provide a life-giving service, and their morale is important. Now we know in every organization, be it government or private sector, you would always have workers who, for various reasons, feel that they're not receiving their due reward at times. And sometimes in government, the bureaucracy moves a bit slow, and in terms of persons getting, certain promotions and so on and so forth. But it is for us as the managers and leaders to, always remember how important it is to always focus on the workers and ensuring that, persons are getting their due rewards and their due benefits for the sacrifice that they're putting in. Personally, what I think is that the Water Services Department has grown over the years, and I think we have reached a stage where, just as with the Electricity Department back in 2011, when it moved from being a department of government to a company, corporate entity, I think the Water Department has reached that stage where it is difficult to operate effectively and efficiently as a utility within the confines of being a government department. Of course, many persons will look at that from various angles and will say, can you cover your expenses and things like that? But that is a debate and discussion to be had. But I think there are some limitations, that are put on us as we operate, a utility, a 24/7 service within the government, the central government bureaucracy.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. It is 14 minutes past the hour of 1, so we will take a break to say thank you to our sponsors, and we will be back to continue our program. You are listening to WINN FM 98.9 for another edition of Inside the News. We have some representatives from the St Kitts Water Services Department, Ryan Phillip and Mr. Cromwell Williams. Stay tuned.
At The Cable, we know being local means supporting our own, and our customers deserve the best. Our customers deserve platinum. So now, all customers of The Cable qualify for our new Platinum Loyalty Card. An elite MasterCard experience that lets you support your own like never before. Instantly send money to any Platinum Loyalty member at home or around the world. Shop online or in person anywhere MasterCard is accepted. Save with no interest and 0 annual fees. And the best part? If you're a Cable customer, you are already pre-approved. Just visit the Cable building in Basse-Terre or sign up online at www.thecable.net. Get your Platinum Loyalty Card today because you deserve platinum. Terms and conditions apply.
Gift for Dad's birthday? Click. Ooh, Janice's retirement party? Click. Outfit for my girl's wedding? Click.
With TDC Airbox, you click, we ship. Register for your free U.S. mailbox today and shop all your favorite stores online. Enjoy the convenience. Free consolidation up to £10. Competitive rates. Free package tracking account with live notifications. Free delivery and, of course, excellent customer service. Visit our website at tdcairbox.com and register today. For more information, visit our offices at the C.A. Paul Industrial Site in St. Kitts and Penny's Industrial Site in Nevis. Follow us on social media at TDC Airbox. TDC Airbox. You click, we ship. Terms and conditions apply.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Good afternoon and welcome back to Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. We are continuing our discussion. It is 19 minutes past the hour of 1 in our studios, and the phone lines are still open. So we are welcoming your calls. Whatever question you may have, I'm pretty sure Ryan and Cromwell would be in a position to answer to the best of their ability. So we are still welcoming your calls. Remember, we have our WhatsApp number, which is 662-2204, 662-2204. So if you have no money on your phone, you can simply send us a text via that number. We have a caller on the line. Caller, good afternoon. You are live on Inside the News.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cornelius and guest.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, right, yeah. I know that the professionals you have there in the studios are hard at work, and I'm sure they're not just sitting on their laurels. They're definitely looking at our water needs. But sometimes it just seems as if we are dealing with our water problems in an ad hoc way, basically addressing the problems, paying attention to the problems, insofar as the public is concerned, when the hot spots come up, putting out fires, when there's drought, we pay attention to it, and when the rainy season comes, we forget about it. But before we rush headlong into any particular solution to our water problems, I think we need to do some thorough research into all aspects of the problem, right? We have to look not just at the current, but future needs as well, and do the appropriate cost-benefit analysis and arrive at the best solution, taking into account not just our current needs, but general environmental concerns as well. And certainly we should be planning for redundancy. I don't think there's an existing ring main around the island so that everything gets interconnected. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, there are elements of it, but not the entire island, to make supplies more, certainly manageable and more consistent, reliable. It may turn out that desalination may be the best option, but anytime it rains and we watch those millions of gallons of fresh water going into the sea, that's major wastage, I think. And we have to wonder if there isn't a better option in looking at the storage of water, so that we don't have to depend on wet and dry seasons and the vagaries of climate change. Most likely, a study would show that the Bastille and the Southeast Peninsula probably consume the most water. Why not build an artificial reservoir on the aquifer in the Ponds Needmos area? Not a reservoir of concrete, but a large artificial lake to collect water from some of the guts, like the ones that run through Bastille, for instance. So, of course, it would have the multi-purpose of not just replenishing the aquifer where the well field is, but it will have storage capacity during the dry season and divert water from the College and Westbourne guts, which themselves are the cause of several problems. I don't think such a project would take any huge effort in terms of engineering or finance. As a matter of fact, I think we do that currently with the runoff from the airport runway, but just extend that to the guts as well. And, it would also prevent the silting of the Bay Road area. I think it was mentioned before that, desalination, we may have a problem with what to do with the waste from desalination and so on. Well, right now it's being contacted, the Bay Road and other coastal areas are being contaminated with silt, okay, from the guts. All right, so And of course, a reservoir smack in the middle of the Ponds and Isthmus area would have recreational possibilities as well. I mean, I think it's designated a national park. Okay, so we could also explore damming of our guts as well as a way of preventing the runoff into the sea. Again, not a great engineering feat because we have lots of rocks and we know how to use them. And so we can use that water for irrigation. For a lot of our water problem, I think, is a result of competing or conflicting usage. Right? So if we can use a different supply for, let's say, agriculture, it will free up water for domestic use, etc. Okay? And finally, I noticed mention was made of possibly turning the water department into a corporate entity. I'm not so sure that our experience with corporate entities around here has been good. So I think we should be tread very cautiously with that as a way going forward, because as it's pointed out, water is life. I mean, it's a necessity, absolute necessity. And one of the things about corporate entities is that when they try to operate and profit, prices go up. And I don't think we want to do that with water. So just some considerations for the gentleman there. All right then.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matt Mahon, for your contribution to our program. We'll be taking no more calls. We'll close out the phone line and allow Mr. Williams and Mr. Phillip to respond to these questions.
Okay,
Mr.
yeah,
Williams?
okay. Before I get to the concerns that the last caller just raised, there are one or two that we had skipped over before, and I just want to briefly address them. One of our earlier callers mentioned or questioned why do we need to bring in experts, because we did mention that currently, as we speak, we have well drilling experts underground. And yes, St Kitts is one of the few countries around in the Caribbean that can proudly boast that for years we've had our own in-house capacity to do well drilling. Unfortunately, that capacity is somewhat limited at the moment. The last drill rig that we would have purchased, I think back in the early 2000s, would have is no longer operable, so to speak. And one of the last persons that we had who had the expertise of drilling, Mr. Jerome Pinney. He's still around, no longer with the department. He worked extensively both with St Kitts and with Nevis, drilling, doing well drilling and so on. And some of the expertise has been passed on to the younger ones, yes, but there comes a time where, because we have now exploited most of our easier targets in terms of drilling. So it was easy to find the first 4 million gallons per day capacity, which we now have. But to get the next 2 million gallons per day capacity is going to be much more challenging. And so what we have turned to over the recent years is to try and do deeper drilling. And so that sort of requires, a bit more, a different type of drilling equipment. And so that is why we would have turned to bead, for example, and they would have been able to mobilize the required equipment and expertise. So this contract is for them to come in, drill the wells, and hand over to the government, where we will continue to operate and maintain them. So that is quite acceptable to us. So that answers that question. I also want to touch on an issue. I think Mr. Phillip would have mentioned that the supply that we have is becoming more. The supply. I want to clarify for the public that is not that we have so much. We have less water, even though the rainfall patterns are trending towards being less. The important thing to remember is that we have much more water in 2021 than we had in, say, 2000, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We continue to increase the amount of water that we have available to distribute by drilling more wells and so on. The important thing to note, though, is that the demand, the need for that water is what has increased double-fold, triple-fold, quadruple as we go along, because we're building so many more houses. Person's lifestyle has improved.
Yeah.
When people had a pit toilet, now hardly, I'm subject to correction, but I would think hardly many persons have a pit toilet. Everyone has flush toilet. An average home might have in 2-3 flush toilets.
Yes.
And so, it's just that the amount of water that we're using has increased so much more that it makes it much more difficult to meet that demand. So I don't want the persons to have any misconception that we have less water. We no longer have, how much ever million gallons capacity. Our capacity continues to increase. But it's just that our demand is also increasing significantly from year to year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. We are at the end time of our program, 1:30. Let me say thank you to all of you who have joined us, of course, via Radio Land at home and abroad, and of course, those of you who tuned in via Facebook and YouTube. You were listening to yet another edition of Inside the News here on WINN FM 98.9. I was your host for today, Devon Cornelius, and we had representatives of the St Kitts Water Services Department, Mr. Cromwell Williams as the manager and water engineer, and Mr. Ryan Phillip as the assistant water engineer. On behalf of all of us here at WINN FM, thank you guys so much for accepting the invitation. And I can say that the listening audience received a lot of information. And I hope that once you're listening and you are guilty, I could assume that many of us are guilty of wasting water. But if you're listening and you're guilty of wasting water, make that step towards saving water. Because saving water, you're saving electricity and you're saving lives, because water is life. Thank you so much. And until next time, continue to have a super Saturday. Have a good one.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib,